Termites. Night 90. That's right. What are we drinking? El Grito beer. Four Corners. This brewery is in Dallas, Texas. Sometimes if I have an afternoon off, I like to go see what local breweries are around. Even though I'm a child of the Anheuser-Busch Brewery in St. Louis, Missouri, I try to stay loyal, but now, they got bought out and stuff. This whole can, whole top pops off, turning it into its own glass. The whole 360 deal comes off. But I'm not a fan of drinking out of cans. Because why? My uncles who worked at the brewery told me that the beer, if you go to a brewery and take a tour, go to the Miller Lite one. You ever been there in Milwaukee? I felt like I was in the enemy camp, being a Bud Light girl. And my friend Kathy, though, she's a Miller Lite lady. It was a great tour. They have these old caves, free beer at the end. Just wonderful, even though it was the enemy camp. They're probably all owned by the same people now. I don't even know. But anyway, the cans on the assembly line, they float for a while without lids. And my uncle always says, pour the beer out of a can into a glass. Not bottles, because you can see in the bottle, but the can, you don't know what could have fallen in there. Yeah, so that'd be my advice, being a person related to a lot of people who worked in a brewery. Pour your can of beer into a glass. Okay, termites? What else do I have for you since we talked last? I Googled it. Tanya Tucker salsa, no longer available. Not that I want the lady not to make money. I'm just saying, I know comedians that do this and people that they just go too far off field, off the highway. God gave you a thing. Stay on your highway. It'd be like me just going, I'm going to make candy bars. The fuck? I don't know anything about any of all that. Even hot sauce. I don't know anything about it, but I love hot sauce. Maybe I'll try. Just because there's one I got from Charleston. I'll display it in the next story time. You guys really should get this one. So Tanya's about to get in some trouble with the Vice President of the United States, as if she hasn't gotten enough trouble with just regular people. Now she's gonna forage out into politics. Can't wait to hear this one. It's funny when you think about it. Glenn and I once performed at the Republican National Convention, and we were wired the whole time we were there. As far as I know, our condition caused no ripples. Let's go to the RNC to perform and do an 8-ball of blow. I mean, man, I made that up, but she says wired. I'm assuming they were doing blow, and nobody noticed. Good for them, getting away with that at the RNC. Of course, I wouldn't expect a Republican to know if I was coked up. I don't think they would be, in tune with, I would know. I know enough comedians, blah, blah. But anyway. The next time I came to the event, I was a single mother, and they had people trying to get me kicked off the show, saying I didn't fit into their idea of family values. Well, certainly we've come a long way away from family values. We have a president married how many times? 3, 4? I don't even know. A lot. And then there was that porn lady. There's a lot going on there. A statement released to the press when it was announced that I've been performing at the 1992 Republican National Convention read, "If this is a convention of family values, I don't understand why Tanya Tucker was selected to sing the national anthem." The statement was made by one of the female delegates. I'm not generally a political person, and I don't usually get involved in public debates. I didn't set out to be the country singer raising hell at the Grammy Awards. I just said some things I believe needed to be said. I do wish I were more politically aware. Well, when would you have time for that? Get back to the salsa. Prioritize. I do wish I would have. And I know I don't keep up with things like I should, but one thing I do feel strongly about is single mothers and what they have to face every day. When someone in the press mentioned that Vice President Dan Quayle had taken a shot at Candace Bergen's character, Murphy Brown, for her single motherhood. I said I'd like to talk with him about it and stated to the press, who is Dan Quayle to go after single mothers? What in the world does he know what it's like to go through pregnancy and have a child with no father who will help take responsibility for the baby? Who is he to be calling single mothers tramps? Exactly. When I got to the 92 convention in Houston, as if everybody in the press wanted me to duke it out with the vice president. Every time I turned around, some journalist was wanting to talk about it, and I felt uncomfortable. I felt uncomfortable on one level because I worried that it'd look like I was acting disrespectful. Lord knows my father had drummed it in my head, you don't act disrespectful. But on the other hand, I felt I had something to say, and if I didn't run into the vice president in person, I might as well make my stand to the media. What I said was that single mothers have a hard go, and Vice President Quayle should educate himself about the difficulties. I said I had good, strong values and that my children were certainly loved and cared for. I also said I wasn't a typical single mother because I had a way to earn money to give them whatever they needed, and I had a strong family surrounding me. My children were also lucky enough to have a father who wanted to be actively involved with their upbringing. It's the women who get left by husbands who won't support their kids and the women who need job training that are hurting. And it's men like the vice president who need to re-examine their prejudices and do something to help these single mothers survive. Amen, Tanya. You waited, shove it up Dan Quayle's ass. I love it. And she's performing there, so you can't say she's a Democrat coming at you. You all hired her. That's on you. That is all my rural friends would say when you fuck up. My brother-in-law says it all the time. Yeah, well, that's on you. Exactly. I thought about the convention. I also wanted to make one thing clear. I never wanted to be held up as an example, say, for teenage girls. A teenage pregnancy can be such a tragedy. I waited until I was set financially to have my children. I thought about that convention and the single mother issues a lot since then. One of the things that irritates me about this whole single mother versus family values concept is the question of single father. Who are those guys in this mix? I was lucky that Ben was there for his children. But too often men disappear and leave the burden on the women. Exactly. This is one of the things in the world that gripes my dad more than anything. I told you about the time my folks tried to elope when they were 15. There's part of the story that Mother-Dad didn't tell anyone for years. By the time they discovered that no justice of the peace in Lovington, New Mexico would marry two 15-year-olds, it was too late to drive back to Denver City, Texas. Since it was freezing cold, Dad suggested they get a motel room. Well, my mother about flipped. No way was she going to spend a night in a motel with a man who wasn't yet her husband. Dad begged her, Juanita, we're going to freeze to death out here. We got to get a room. With her lips turning blue from the wind whistling through the truck's broken window, Mother finally said okay. They got the room, but Dad was so afraid she'd bolt out of there. He slept on top of the bedspread, fully clothed. Nobody in Denver City ever knew about that night, but if they had, my mother's name would have been Mud. People probably wouldn't have thought twice about Dad's involvement. Just Mother's. Exactly. Dad often tells this story to how to illustrate unfair society is to females. All too often, the women pay the price for what men and women do, innocent or not. To point an accusing finger at a single mother and never question the single father's involvement or responsibility is not just unfair, it's stupid. That's a direct quote. Ironically, I had just made the video for my next single release, Two Sparrows in a Hurricane, which I saw as a tribute to my own family values. Every so often in a singer's career, one song can take you to an entirely different level. I don't feel that way about a joke. I think they're all just jokes, but maybe. Two Sparrows in a Hurricane was one of those songs. It was such a pivotal point in my career in the so-called comeback in 1986. My asking price for shows increased, and so did the booking offers. When you start thinking about what just one song can do, you start to understand why songwriters are such heroes around Nashville. Well, I'm going to have to go Google Two Sparrows in a Hurricane. I don't think I know that song. Was it good? Was it a career changer? I was initially attracted to this song because it spoke of two very poor young people getting married and making the marriage work despite their hard circumstances. Since it reminded me of my parents, I immediately knew I wanted to record it, but I also knew I wanted to make a video that not only paid tribute to my folks, but Ben and our children. but included Ben and our children. The song speaks of 3 stages of married life: the 2 young newlywed couple, the older family, and the elderly couple. I asked Mae Axton to play the older woman, and she accepted. Ben and I and Presley and Grayson played the young family. Ben and I weren't a couple anymore. My dad had to convince him to even appear in the video. What happened then? In the end, he did it for the same 2 reasons I had: Presley and Grayson. No matter how things ended up between Ben and me, I wanted our children to have this film clip. What went wrong there? They haven't really explained. I thought, oh, here we go. Chapter 55. Believe me, that the unresolved situations involving Ben and my band during 1991, combined with events set in motion during 1992, led to 1993 being the saddest year of my life. Oh no. What happened? We're going to find out. It was a year filled with pain, with fear. It was a year filled with fear, pain, and despondency. The fear part of it started in the summer of '92 when my office began receiving letters from an overzealous fan who believed he and I should be married. Oh no, a stalker. I have had a couple stalkers, but more impressively, I think I told you guys this. I had a man run backstage in West Virginia and said that I had to marry him and he was going to take me that night. Now, maybe if he'd offer a nice steak dinner before that, you can't just grab me and take me. You got to at least maybe baked potato. I like sour cream and butter. Salt, lots of salt. Maybe a nice T-bone. I like prime rib. I like White Castle. He could have brought 4 White Castles in a bag, and I would have given him time. But you can't just come grab people. That's not well thought out. And there was no usher. Well, there was, but she was like 100. Honey, are you okay back there? Fuck no, I'm hiding in a closet, lady. What? I don't even know where the opening act was. Anyway, the guy never found me, as you can tell, or I'd be kept right now in West Virginia. He'd have taken me somewhere. Anyway, he said if I didn't marry him, he was going to find me and take me off into the woods to live with him. Exactly. This seems to be a recurring theme. I should have just introduced him to my father, since Dad seems to be able to run off most of my suitors. As time went by, the letters started turning threatening. Oh, no. See, my guy didn't even write a letter. Bought a ticket, showed up. Came in, I'm taking her tonight. That was his plan. The man knew my tour schedule. Well, now everybody knows everything. And he also seemed to know my routine when I was in Nashville, so he hired some security guards to travel with me in case I was being stalked. I saw the man who'd been writing the letters at a 92 cutting event. That's that horse thing. In Fort Worth. Dad had alerted security that I've been receiving threats, so people were watching the crowd. I was watching to ride when I noticed a man walking towards me. I noticed him right away because his T-shirt and his baseball cap, he didn't look like he belonged at a rodeo event where everybody was in cowboy hats and Western shirts. When he got real closer, I could read what was written on his shirt. Oh, fuck. The Silver Assassin. Oh, my God. The guards spotted him, too, because just about the time they announced my name, I rode into the arena. I saw them surround this guy and escort him out. All through the ride, I kept thinking about him, and even before I finished and located my assistant and the security guards, I guess he was the one who'd been writing the letters. The guards had taken him back to his van, which had pictures of me plastered all over the inside. Oh, no. But since he hadn't done anything or made any threatening advances, all they could do was tell him to leave the county. Just the county? I guess. What else are you going to do? He left that day, and I didn't see him again until months later when I was in Nashville recording my next album, Soon. That's the name of it. The loss and sadness started with a phone call from my old friend Michael Tovar in Los Angeles. I've had bad news come over the phone lines, but never like Tovar's bad news that September. I've got AIDS, Tanya. Tovar told me. I've known since March, but I couldn't get the courage to tell you. I was numb when he spoke, and although the thought that he could have AIDS had been in my mind a few months earlier when he'd flown to Las Vegas to do my hair and makeup for a show, I've been requesting Tovar as my hair and makeup guy every chance I got. But after Presley was born, I lost touch with him for almost a year. During that time, he had some bad financial times and lost his salon. I almost read that as saloon. Whew. By the time I learned about it, he was working on video shoots and whatever freelance work he could find. I hated the fact he hadn't phoned me about the salon. Maybe I could have helped or put together a group of people to help. But Tovar was a proud man, and the only way he would help take my assignments, the only way he would take my help was to take assignments like the Las Vegas show. When he arrived in Las Vegas, he tried to act like if nothing was wrong. He loved seeing my children on the surface, but he was his usual upbeat self, but he appeared to have lost some weight and he coughed a lot. I also noticed he kept wiping sweat from his face and his neck. I asked if he'd been sick and he said no, just overworked and tired. Somewhere in the recess of my mind, I wondered if he could possibly have AIDS, but the thought was so terrible, I immediately buried it. Even though I feared he was ill, I hadn't allowed myself to consider the reality. Now Tovar was confirming what I hadn't been able to face. I really thought I'd beaten it, he explained, and I understood. Tovar's motto had always been accentuate the positive and eliminate the negative. He hadn't been able to work, and he had been evicted from his apartment because he couldn't pay the rent. He was living with a psychologist friend named Wanda von Klast, who convinced him to begin calling his friends and allowing them to say goodbye. I tried to stay positive during that initial conversation, telling him that people could live years with AIDS and that there might be a cure just around the corner. Then I promised I'd come see him as soon as I could. Wanda phoned me soon after Tovar gave me the news. I'd known her for some time, and through Tovar, I'd followed her life through graduate school and the time she was setting up practice in Los Angeles. She and I were both women who always wanted a lot out of life, and also, like me, she was a woman who tended to get very involved with the lives of her friends. He hadn't told me the whole story, and she knew I needed to know what was really going on. He refused medication that might prolong his life, and he may not have as much time as you think. I was in deep denial. Tovar was in his mid-30s. I could not accept the fact that he would die. Should we read some more? Want another paragraph? Sad times. I'm sure you may have some questions about AIDS, Wanda went on. You may not want to ask, but I know in the back of your mind you're probably worried about personal contact with him. Don't be ashamed of feeling nervous about contact with him. It's fair. AIDS is a deadly virus. I didn't want to admit it, but exactly how the disease might be transmitted was very much on my mind, especially if I took the children to see him, which I wanted to do. Wanda explained that AIDS is not transmittable by casual contact. She explained you must have an exchange of bodily fluids such as blood or semen to contract AIDS. The chances of transmitting the disease through something like saliva are minuscule, practically non-existent. She tried to prepare me for the realities of seeing Tovar for the first time since the disease had become full-blown. The changes would be more physical, she explained. I need to prepare myself for some mental deterioration, too, since there were days when his memory lapsed. She also told me that although my denial was completely natural, it did not change the fact that Tovar was terminally ill. Well, right. Who would say that to somebody? Look, I know you're in denial, which means you're not acknowledging the actual situation, but that doesn't mean that it's not real. Right. I would drink a lot too, if these were the kind of conversations I had to have a lot. It was a reality I needed to accept and move to a stage where, as her friend, I could help him face the rest of his life. Soon after that call, Tovar moved from Wanda into the Wyland Flowers Hospice, where he could receive round-the-clock care. The staff later told me Tovar brought a lot of life into the hospice. Even when he was the sickest, he tried to be a positive force among the other patients. When I called Tovar back, I said I was not only coming to visit as soon as possible, I was bringing my kids. You don't have to do that, he said. I understand if you're worried about them being around an AIDS patient. Thanks to Wanda, I knew there was nothing to worry about. That's a good place to stop, termites. We're almost done. Isn't that? I mean, it's too bad because I think this book ends when she's like 4. I'm kidding! I see how I keep doing that? She's probably only 35. I don't know if there's another Tanya one, but we're going to move on to something different after Tanya. And then maybe we'll revisit if she's written another one. I don't know. I haven't giggled it. All right, termites. The weather's getting nice. It's almost fishing time. As soon as that lake cools down, it's still pretty hot. that's all I got for you, termites. California termites, take cover. Very sad for you. Sad times. It was the worst of times of the worst of times. I'm not even drunk. All right, termites. Get your fall pajamas out. It might not be ready for them, but it's a promissory note that fall is coming. Football has started. I won 10 games. Wasn't enough, though, to defeat people in my family. All right, get your sheet. Get your favorite pillow. Close your eyes. Ready? Night-night, termites.